Hello, everyone. Welcome to this series on the Gematria of Genesis. And in this episode, we're going to discuss the change of Abram's name to Abraham. And it comes in Genesis chapter 17. I'm going to read you the verse which is relevant. And God talked with him, saying, "As for me, behold, my covenant is with you. You shall be a father of many nations. Neither shall your name any more be called Abram, but you shall be called Abraham, for a father of many nations I have made you." And then it goes on to say, "As for your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah her name shall be. And I will bless her and give you a son of her." So in context, Abraham, why Abraham? Because is nation, and therefore it says his name is changed from Av, being father, Ham, nation, father of many nations. It's not exactly like that, but let's have a look at this detail. And the first point I want to make is that in the earlier sessions, we discussed this 1-4 sequence. We mentioned that the mist rose off the face of the earth, and that mist is Ed in Hebrew, and that is 1 plus 4, 1 being God, 4 being the phenomenal world or the material world. You had the 4 rivers coming out of the Garden of Eden. Again, 1, the Garden of Eden, and the 4 rivers. So this 1 plus 4 sequence was kind of manifested. Then we looked at the tree of life, and we looked at the Gematria for the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And we found that there was a ratio of 1 to 4. And even Adam's name, Aleph Daleth Mem, is 1, 4, 40. So this 1-4 sequence is very relevant in the whole creation of the world. Now, of course, simple mathematics tells us 1 plus 4 is 5, and therefore 5 is very significant. So let's have a look at this 5, because 5 is the letter He. And as we saw in the name from Abram to Abraham, the He was inserted into his name. So let's go back a bit. And if we look in Genesis 2 verse 4, and you have to look in the Hebrew Bible for this, because what you see here is a term, and it says, "These are the generations they have on earth when they were created." When they were created is this word here, Behibaram. And what you see here is that the He is much smaller than the other letters. Now, we've learned this before, and we know that in the Bible, most letters are, say, the normal size, but there's also large letters and small letters. Large letter, for example, is the letter Bet, which is the first letter of the Bible, which has a value of 2, indicating the Big Bang, the duality of the world. But here we see this small He. And the English translation is "when they were created." But if you look at the Hebrew, it says Be-hibaram, and the He is small. Be means in or with. So it could say with Be, the He, with the He, Baram. Baram means creation. So with the He they were created. So this follows the sequence of this 1 plus 4, which indicates the creation of the world. So Behibaram, it says, with the He they were created. Well, let's accept that as it is. But interestingly enough, if you take Hibaram, Hibaram is actually an anagram of Abraham. You switch the letters around, and Behibaram comes out to Avraham. So the implications here is that Behibaram, with the hay they were created, is also implicit in the generations of Abraham. Let's go one step further here. Okay, so we learn that Abraham's name will no longer be Abram and it will be Abraham. And Sarai's name will no longer be Sarai, but will be Sarah. And if we look at this diagram here, what you see is that Sarai is spelt with a yod. Now, yod has got a value of 10. So if you take that yod and you split it into two, like sort of nuclear fission, then you get two hays, one hay here and one hay here. So what you see in this sequence is that the yod is taken out of Sarai, split into two hays. One hay goes into Sarah, spelt Shin Resh Hay, and the other hay is added into Abraham. And we know that in correspondence with this commandment that his name shall be changed and that Sarai's name shall be changed, that there's a circumcision, and then Sarah becomes pregnant and gives birth to Isaac. So this is interesting composition. One, Behibaram in Genesis, right at the very beginning of creation, is indicative that Abraham was actually indicated in the act of creation. And secondly, that we see the impact of the change of name of both Sarai and Abram, so that Sarah and Abraham, that they then become fertile. So I call this 5 the crystal of creation. And in this instance, the 5, the hay, has become the crystal of creation for the birth of Isaac. But let's go one step further, because if you remember from the previous sessions, that when we look at the letter Aleph, the letter Aleph comprises of a Vav and 2 yods. And that this yod, Vav, yod has a value of 26, which is exactly the same as the name for God, Yod He Vav He, which also is spelled 10 plus 5 plus 6 plus 5, has a value of 26. So there's a commonality here between the Aleph and the name of God. So, but in this instance, what we can see is actually one of the yods is split into 2 hays, just as in the case of Sarah and Abraham. So if we split the yod into 2 hays, then you have Yod He, Vav He, which is the name, the holy name for God. This is YHVH in the same form. But what you see here, that in the case of the Aleph, you have a balance. It means the Vav, which is a hook, is balanced between the 2 yods. And this is the idea of the Aleph, the oneness before creation, the oneness of God. And after creation, you have the duality, where you have this imbalance. And what does this imbalance mean? You have a value of Yod He, 10 and 5, 15 here, 5 here, with a Vav. The Vav is it's like a semi-permeable membrane in biological terms. It means there's a flow of energy from a higher concentration to a lower concentration, from heaven towards earth. And this is this flow of energy which basically gave us life on earth. And so we see this reflection in the change of name of Abraham and Sarah is actually reflected in the name of God, and the shift from the Aleph to the form of Yod-He, Vav-He. So basically, if we summarize this, then He, or 5, is the crystal of creation comprising 1 and 4, where 1 is God and 4 is the phenomenal world. The splitting of the Yod into 2 He's enabled the act of creation to take place. And the name of God, Yod-He, Vav-He, YHVH, represents the flow of creative energy between heaven and earth. And the insertion of the He into the names of Abraham and Sarah enabled the creativity of Sarah and Abraham, leading to the birth of Isaac. And hence we learn that God informs Isaac, I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings shall come out of you, come out of your loins. Thank you once again. This is the end of this episode. And again, my book is available on Amazon, and also you can find more details in the aleph.info. Goodbye. See you in the next session.